Hi guys, how you all doing? This is the Redstone Ninja here, and today I've got another Redstone tutorial episode for you guys. So, grab all your repeaters and let's get started. So today, what are we going to be talking about? Well, today, as you may have guessed from the video title, we're going to be talking about something called weak and strong power blocks. Let me just start off by saying that things like pistons and iron doors, dispensers, redstone lamps, you can easily tell when they've been activated, but a brick block, for instance, when that's been activated, it's invisible to the pixel eye. So today we're going to be learning about how to tell when a block is powered or not, and how to basically use the fundamental aspects of redstone itself to your advantage to make circuits more compact and more usable. So what are we going to need? Well, we're going to need redstone repeaters, probably a redstone lamp will be useful, redstone torch, and that's pretty much it, I think. So, oh wait, no, I'll need a block time, block of iron because they're cool. So there are two types of blocks. There's weak power, well, there's three types of blocks. There's blocks that aren't powered at all but they're boring, and then there's weak power blocks and strong power blocks. Now let's see what we can do with this. We can make a block of redstone here, put that there and that there, put a repeater here and a redstone here. This block is weakly powered because it is being powered by redstone. Any block that has redstone pointing into it, something like this block is still weakly powered. It's exactly the same. You can have the redstone in any configuration. It's just this is the simplest one. This block is weakly powered, and just so you know, that block is no longer weakly powered. It doesn't work like that. Redstone blocks don't work like that. It has to be redstone to weakly power a block. Now, because this is a repeater, you can, I don't know, maybe you can think of it because there's actually 3 redstone dust in this crafting recipe. It's actually strongly powering this. Now, what is the difference? Well, if we look at this weakly powered block, if we try to get a redstone out of the other side, nothing's happened. If we try to get redstone out to the other side of this weakly powered block, it works there, and believe it or not, it actually works. Oops, it actually works down. You can do that. That is a thing. Look at it. It's so weird, but it works. You can power things like this. Oops. It still works because this is a strongly powered block, and therefore it will power all the blocks around it. That includes above and below. So that's going to be powered, and also that's going to be powered. And if I were to just get some blocks here, them are also powered. So that's the strongly powered block and the weak power block. Basically, if you run a repeater into a block, it strongly powers it. If you run redstone into a block, it weakly powers it. And there is a difference because weak power blocks cannot draw a redstone output. But are there any more differences? Well, there are a few more differences. If you take a weakly power block, you can take a signal out of it if you use a repeater. So basically, you can send a signal through a block, but there has to be a repeater on one side. So you have to put the repeater on this side and then redstone on the other, or redstone on this side and repeater on the other. But of course, you could always strongly power the block and then have repeater coming out the other end, but that, of course, takes up more delay. So you're best off using redstone, really. Any more differences? Well, there are a few more differences. Well, basically just one more, and then we'll move on to what this can be used for. A weakly power block will power activate what are they called? I forgot what they're called. They're mechanic blocks? Oh, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean. Pistons and redstone lamps, dispensers, anything like that requires redstone to turn on can be turned on by a weakly powered block. You can see this redstone is not touching any of these things, yet they're still being powered by this weak power block. That can be any block, of course. I'm just using iron because I think it looks cool. So what can we do with this? Oh wait, no, just thought I mentioned this also works. It works with strong power blocks and weak power blocks. The only difference at all between these two is that redstone cannot be powered by a weak power block. Because if you think about it, you'd just be able to do this if that were true. You could just do this and send a signal through it and have to use half the redstone, which would be a bit cheaty. Fortunately, that's not the case. The only difference between these two is that you cannot draw a redstone signal with redstone dust out of a weakly powered block. Okay, so now what can we use this for? Well, there's actually a very interesting property which means that we can do something like this. Now, along with the redstone repeater, redstone torches can also strongly power blocks, but only the block above it, which is very important to note. You cannot strongly power a block next to it or below it. It has to be above. I suppose the easy way to remember this is that the redstone bit at the top is pointing upwards. So that's how that works. If I then put a redstone torch on here, this block is being strongly powered, which powers the torch, turning it off. If we put another module of that on top of here, you can see the pattern repeats itself, which means that we can vertically transport a redstone signal very high using the strong and weak powered blocks thingy majig. I don't even want to call it. I don't even know what to call it. Should I call it a theory? No, it's not a theory because it exists. And it's not like something that you can theorize. I don't know. I might call it a theory. I don't know. It doesn't really need a name. Using strong and weak powered blocks, you can actually do this, which means that we can send a signal up very high, very fast. Oops, wrong place. Oops, wrong place again. I'll just put it there. You'll see there is a bit of delay because it takes one tick for a redstone torch to turn on. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 ticks delay, but it's very useful for compacting down circuits. And if you want to compact it down even more, then that was called a torch tower, by the way. In case I didn't mention it, that was a torch tower. There is actually a more compact torch tower, but it's got a bit of limitations in what it can do. Because there is something else you can measure of these torch towers. If I put a bunch of redstone lamps here, you can see that it's not doing a good job of lighting them all up. Not a good job at all. If I were to continue the pattern, then we just have on redstone, you'd have on redstone lamps, then 2 off ones, then 2 on ones. And you don't want that, do you? If you want like a whole strip of redstone lamps going upwards and you want them all to be powered, well, for that you're going to need the other one that I mentioned before, because this in fact does do what you want it to do, in the sense that it powers all the blocks on one side and depowers all the blocks on the other. So if I get a bunch of redstone lamps here, if I put this here, it flips entirely to the other side, which is really, really useful. Now, how is this working? Well, you can see that if I power this block here, it's turning off this torch, which is making this a normal block, which means that this has nothing to turn it off. It's going to turn on, strongly power this block, and this block is going to power this. This is going to directly power this, and whether it's next to a block, whether this is next to a block that's been strongly powered, it's going to turn on. I don't know if that was too confusing, but basically it works. Just deal with it. It works. Now, what else can we do with this? Well, I may have mentioned this before, but you can actually do cool things with this, because how can I explain it? Well, imagine you have this sort of setup. You've got redstone running along here in repeater form, like something like this, I don't know. Say you've got redstone up there in one of your circuits, and then you want to cross over redstone like this. Well, it'd be easy. All you've got to do is you strongly power this block and then give it a redstone output coming out like that. Obviously, I cannot list all the functions of this, but basically, what you need to take from this episode, and I know there's a lot to take in, and there's a lot more I could probably say, and I probably missed a lot. Before I end, there's something very important I need to say, because it's very, very useful. Pressure plates have the same property. You got to think of everything in the terms of strong and weak power blocks. Because normally you would think of pressure plates in real life. If you were to think of Minecraft in real life, you would think that redstone would simply come straight out. But no, you can have almost wireless redstone. Imagine this in real life. There's no wires connecting that, is there? It doesn't make any sense, but it works. Because this pressure plate is strongly powering this block, which is powering any blocks that are adjacent to it, which includes the block above, but of course that's a pressure plate, so that's not going to be powered, and the block below. Very, very important to note, when a block is strongly powered, it also powers the blocks above it and below it. And I think that's it. I'll just see if there's anything else I could possibly mention. No, not really. Apart from the fact that, I don't know, what could I mention? Obviously, this isn't like for practical uses. I'm just trying to demonstrate how exactly this whole system works. So, if I were to power this, the redstone lamps turn on. And you might think, well, that's weird because the redstone isn't touching it. Well, that's because this block is being weakly powered, and because redstone mechanism block can actually draw output from that, it's going to turn on. I think I should stop waffling now, because maybe you understand it, and maybe some of you are completely confused. I have no idea. Whenever I have to explain this, I always mess it up, but hopefully this time it hasn't been that much of a mess. If you power a block with redstone, it is weakly powered. If you power a block with a repeater or a torch or a button or a lever, that's something else I didn't mention. The only thing that can weakly power blocks is redstone. Everything else, buttons, redstone torches, redstone repeaters, pressure plates, everything else strongly powers it, which means that you can obviously take out a redstone output, and you don't need a repeater. If it were weakly powered, this would not work, because that's taking redstone out of a weakly powered block, which would not work. So obviously this is strongly powered, but it also raises the fact that you can do this. You can press a button and then have redstone coming out the bottom. What? How does that make any logical sense? It's not connected. There should be like a graphical thing where if there's like a strongly powered block, it should like make a column and rise up to it, but no, it's just floating and it's still being powered. I've never personally understood that, but it's very important that you just let it slide and forget logic for a while and just accept it. Anyway, I think I've waffled on for long enough, quite long enough. Hopefully you understood everything in this episode. Personally, I don't know how well I did explain that. It's one of the most complicated things to explain in redstone. In the whole of the redstone subject, it's the hardest thing to explain. This guy, he does probably a much better explanation on weak and strong power blocks. I'll put a link in the description if you want to go look at that. I don't know if you've heard of him. It's a guy who goes by the name of Sethbling. You've probably heard of him, but he does a much better explanation than me. But unfortunately, I almost said unfortunately, wow. But unfortunately, I think I've exhausted all the topics to do with this, or at least all the ones I can think of. If I have missed something out, then please do shout at me in the comment section below, but I think I've covered everything to do with weak and strong power blocks. Like I said, I'll put a link in the description to a slightly better description of this subject. But if you did like this video, then do leave a like. If you have any suggestions, not related to this series, but if you have any suggestions for, whoops, I need to go into F1 mode because that was a bit of a fail. If you have any suggestions for my redstone world, then do leave a comment with your suggestion, and if you really want to, then subscribe. But apart from that, this has been the Redstone Ninja, and my work is done here.